my dog that was peacefully sleeping on her bed, and I've set up everything, and now she's playing with her favorite pig toy, which makes this cute little oinking sound. I might have to take it away.
I'm sorry. Another time.
Welcome everyone to the second episode of the monthly Cat Knits podcast. In this podcast, I'm going to talk about what I've been up to in the last month and kind of what I'm looking forward to in the next one. So we are just finished up August and we're starting in September. September is always a fun time. It always feels like the beginning of the year to me, just with school. I actually did go back to school, so I've got my first week. And with COVID kind of improving a bit, I'm actually in person in classes and working in my lab, which feels strange, but is exciting at the same time. Kind of a little bit of awkward excitement. August was an awesome month. I'm in Vancouver, so Pacific Northwest, and August is kind of when you get outside because the weather doesn't last that long, so you really want to take advantage of it when you can. So I ended up spending about 10 days with some girlfriends up in Jasper National Park, and we did some hiking, and I took my knitting along with me. Didn't get a heck of a lot of knitting done as I was too busy hiking and having fun with my girlfriends, but I did make a little bit of progress on my birthday socks, which is a pattern that I created and I want to release hopefully this fall. It's a top-down sock with a little bit of color work around your birthday. So we all turned 30 this year, so that's why I've got 30 in there, and it has an afterthought heel. My plan or my goal is to get one sock knitted, write up the pattern, and then do my first ever test knitting call on Ravelry. So kind of exciting, trying to release my first new pattern, which is a bit of an adventure. More work than I was expecting, as often everything is. I was using the Sweet Georgia Tough Love sock, and this is the colorway Grapefruit. And I absolutely love their sock yarn. I think this might be my third pair of socks that I've knit using their sock yarn. And it's just super bouncy, super beautiful colors too. And they're also based in Vancouver, so it's kind of fun to buy yarn that's very local to me. The other thing that I got up to in August is I went to Austin, Texas, which seems kind of crazy with COVID and having to travel to the US. But although I was very anxious about the whole thing, it really went way better than I was expecting. It was not scary and was a lot of fun. And in fact, it actually made me more relaxed that traveling is something that we can do. Obviously, you need to do everything within what you're comfortable with. So although we were there, we still wore masks a lot of the time. We ate out in restaurants, but we didn't go to a blues club and we did pretty kind of, I guess you'd say, lower risk activities. We spent a lot of time outside. It was boiling hot, so 35 degrees Celsius. And then we came back to Vancouver and I think we're at 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. So it was a nice little heat wave. It reminded me a lot of Hawaii, just the moisture in the air and the heat, just overwhelming. But it's a beautiful city and I would totally go back there. One of the fun things that I did is I checked out the yarn stores that were in Texas. And I ended up spending a few hours at a yarn shop called Hill Country Weavers. And it was amazing. It's one of the biggest yarn shops I've been in. I haven't been in that many. But it had so much yarn. It had La Bien-Aimée, which is a brand I've kind of heard about but haven't seen in person. It had Spin Cycle, of course, Madeline Tosh, which is based in Texas. Julia Assange, Farmer's Daughter Fibers, just all those yarns. So Had so much fun just walking around, taking it in. And I ended up getting yarn. Well, actually, I'll show you the yarn later. But I ended up getting quite a bit of yarn while I was there. But it was a lot of fun. And they also have a great online store. So you can check them out to order online with free shipping within the US over a certain threshold of money. One thing that came up on my social media is Andre Mowry of Drea, Renee Knits. She released this new cardigan, the Douglas Cardigan, which has these beautiful stripes. And it's knit in tuku wool. And it's this Finnish wool, which is something I've never had experience with, which I believe would be a little more rustic. And it's all dyed on a gray base. So it has this kind of heathering. And turns out Sweet Georgia, that Vancouver company I mentioned, actually is now selling their wool. And the colors just look unbelievable. And really, you can almost put them all together. So the Douglas Cardi would go really well with kind of getting to play with color work. With the rustic wool, another thing that came out is Linka Neumann's book. It's called Wilderness Knits. So she has the Norwegian, I think she's from Norway version, but she released the English version, which you can buy on Amazon, and I think it's coming out September 14th. And there's the main pattern on the front is just absolutely gorgeous, and it's one of the sweaters that I want to knit. So speaking of rustic yarns, it's typically, I think she knits it in a Norwegian yarn, and it's supposed to be more of like an outer layer sweater. So it can be a bit more scratchy, so it's not sitting right against your skin. But it's this gorgeous sweater, and she has a bunch of designs in there. So I'm thinking about buying the book, but I need to take a little bit of a spending freeze after going to Austin. And there's tons of patterns. They all seem to be these kind of big woolly sweaters. It's actually, she uses a thicker yarn. I think she uses like an Aran or a bulky weight. So it would be more of a quick sweater and great for winter, rather than like kind of fall, and good for a Canadian winter. I found her through another podcast, and that's Knitting Traditions. She's got a great podcast. I think it's a weekly or bi-weekly podcast. And she does so much great knitting, and she's based, I think she's in Norway. So you kind of get to see, more of the yarns that she buys, which are more common in, I guess, that part of the world. A lot more rustic yarn knitting, which I haven't done much of. Sorry, my dog she gets excited when I film, and she's currently walking around, chewing on all the different toys and showing them to me, waiting for me to play with her, which is pretty cute. But also a little heart-wrenching to watch because I can't play with her right now. Yeah, so that's another fun thing that popped up recently. And along with that, there's been a couple knit-alongs that are starting, the weather's changing. We're getting into September. It's time to start thinking about fall knitting. And with that, it seems like a couple knit-alongs have popped up. So Hohi, she released her, I think it's like in September, she released this whole book of knitting patterns, which are just stunning. Oh, it's called Ready for Fall. And it's all these kind of browns and grays and really rich kind of caramel colors. And she has, in that little kind of mini pattern set that she released, there's a shawl, a sweater, a cowl, a beanie, and a pair of socks. Nice knit work. I think the caramel sauce socks, those look like something that I'd want to try. Very intricate though, so I need to wait until I've got a couple more socks that I want to knit, and then I'm going to take a little bit of a sock break, but I'm definitely going to keep those on the back burner. And with the release of those patterns, she actually is starting her fall knit along. I think the last day to sign up is the 18th, and then on the 19th they'll get assigned a team and then start. And also, all her patterns right now are 25% off until I think it's the 19th. So, time to buy some of her patterns if you haven't already. I've only knit one of her patterns, and that was the Farm Twist jacket that I made my mom, which is this really intricate sweater with all sorts of cable work. And I love the way that looks. And her pattern, so that pattern was super easy to read. She actually did line by line instructions as well as had charts. So I think it's more accessible. And she's got great bags, which I've also always wanted to purchase. Along with her knit along, it looks like West Knits is having a knit along, a shawl knit along starting in October. And Knit City, or Knit Collage, sorry. Knit Collage, which is those big bulky yarns, they're starting to post a bit about a knit along that they're having, which I'm debating joining. So that's where you have those big bulky yarns and those big giant needles, and you create these like a little bit whimsical, totally different than anything you kind of buy or see sweaters. It's been on my list. It's just a tad expensive, especially since I'm in Canada and I have the unfortunate exchange rate with the US. And I'm a student. And I just bought a bunch of yarn. So we'll see. If it comes out late enough, maybe I'll treat myself, depending on how it goes. And lastly, there's Knit City, which is coming to Vancouver, which is a small 2-day yarn. What's it called? It's a convention. It's a yarn convention, and it's happening at the P&E. And the tickets are $15, and they go on sale next Friday, which I think is September 17th. And there's going to be 50 Canadian vendors there. Sweet Georgia is there, along with a bunch that I don't even recognize. Like, I think a lot of small companies that like hand dye yarn, and then like finished garments. I saw there was a weaver. So very exciting. I can't believe, things are starting to open up in person. So I'm definitely going to try to get a ticket to that just to walk around and get exposed to more Canadian knitters. Also, kind of like I have started knitting during the pandemic. So it'd be kind of fun to maybe get a little more involved in the community, and maybe this way I can meet people and explore all the Canadian vendors. Yeah, so that's a bit about what's coming up. And in terms of what I've been up to in the last month, you saw my teeny bit of progress on my birthday socks. So still working on that. The main thing I've been working on, though, is my balloon sweater by Petite Knits. My original plan was to try to finish this while I was in Austin. Did not work. Turns out it takes a lot longer than I thought to knit a sweater. This is actually my second time getting this far. I ended up ripping it out because I didn't like the way it fit. I'll put this on. I'm still unfortunately not happy with the way it fits. I made some changes which I think actually made it worse. Funny how that happens. What I ended up doing is the first time I added I followed the pattern exactly, and there's a bunch of short rows, and I figured I would remove some of the short rows to hopefully remove, I don't know if you can see, there's like a little blip of fabric in the back. So I decided to remove quite a few of the short rows with the hopes of making it fit better around my neck. But now you can see there's like a ripple here and there's a ripple there. And I think it's because the short rows actually added additional fabric here, which allowed the sweater to lie flatter. Basically, long story short, I should have just followed the pattern, which, go figure that the designer had thought about this a lot more than I had. But that's okay. I'm going to keep going. I don't want to rip it out again. I'm confident what I can do. If I tug it here and in the back, then I get rid of the ripples both on the front and in the back. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens when I finish the sweater. So knit all the way down here and then finish the sleeves and block it. I think I can kind of get it to look the way I want it to look. I'm loving the color. I was a little skeptical about it, but I think it's a really beautiful purple. This is Madeline Tosh Merino Light held together with Drops Kid Silk. So it's a very fine knit sweater. So this would be very opposite to those rustic sweaters I was showing you in the DK, or the Knit Collage, which is like jumbo yarn. But I do love the look of small knit sweaters, like more kind of like something you'd buy in a store. So I'm really hoping I can get this done early fall so that I can wear it this fall and winter. So yeah, making good progress along this. I have now joined, and I'm happy with the way this falls. I've got the good drop shoulder, and yeah, definitely would knit another, I mean, I haven't finished yet, but I would knit another Petite Knit sweater. I love her designs, and she's very popular for a good reason. The last thing that I've been working on, which I've been working on for a while now, oops, is this pair of socks that I'm making. I showed these last time, but I just, originally the cuff I had knit it in this color, and I switched to this hot pink. This is Hedgehog Fibers in Gossip, and this is the sock yarn. This is Sweet Georgia in Gelato, I believe it's called, Tough Love Sock. So I'm just starting the cast off process. Oh shoot, my dog's eating my power cord. Good news, power cord is safe. Shouldn't do too much damage. So I ended up cutting the yarn, putting the stitches on the needle, and then knitting up. And I did a good job for like 6 of the stitches for putting them on the needle, but the other ones I messed up somehow. So I have this little bump that happens, which is too bad, but you know, you learn. Now I'll pay much more closer attention next time. I went too far. I don't feel like ripping it out. The other thing I'm having issues with is the cast off. So my first cast off, I don't know what I did, but I kind of got, it looks actually very similar to this, like super loose. So you can see the difference, like see how this almost like fans out because the cast off is quite loose. So I ended up ripping it out and trying a new cast off, and this cast off is the one where you knit two together, knit another one, knit 2 together. It's very similar, I'd say, like, feels like an I-cord bind off, similar. But it's doing the same thing. So I have the same kind of extra puckery at the top, which is too bad. I do like the way this looks better. So I need to keep looking. Please let me know if you know of any better bind offs for socks. Like this would, if you had done a toe up sock, then you'd be binding off here. The other unfortunate thing that happened is I did it once with that one cast off and didn't like it. So I pulled it all out. But at that point I had cut the yarn. So when I tried this new cast on, I didn't realize it, but it required more yarn. So I'm almost out. That's why I've stopped here, because I've got about 15 more stitches left and I'm almost out of the yarn. So I've attached another piece. This is like, I found this as one of the ends on here. I cut those ends off and attached it. So I'm hoping this is enough yarn, because I can't actually find the teeny little ball. Like it's a teeny little amount that I have left. If not, I'll have to just put these down and wait till it appears somewhere in my apartment. So this wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be, but I think I'll try this again. I think I'm going to do a toe up sock and see, I'm going to buy a pattern for a toe up sock and then see what cast off they recommend. And maybe it's just the thing that the cast off for toe up socks it's just looser to accommodate the foot. So these are almost done, which is exciting. I just need to block afterwards and then weave in the ends, and then I can give these away. So not a heck of a lot of knitting in the last month. A bit, but not as much as the month before. And now with school starting, I think unfortunately the amount that I'm going to be knitting is going to go down again. But that doesn't mean I can't stop buying yarn. So in Texas, I'll show you what I got. Oops. Uh-oh. We've got more sirens going by. So while in Texas, as I mentioned, I went to the yarn store and I bought yarn to make a Guthrie sweater. So I bought Spin Cycle. I got more of this. And I got it in the colorway Wololo, and it's dyed in the wool, which is, I think, is their sport weight. Yep. And it's this kind of purpley brown with bits of orange, bits of blue, bits of green. And I got that to go with La Bien-Aimée, which is made in Paris. And I got their sport yarn, which Merino Sport, and in the colorway Winterfell. So it's very soft, looks very bouncy. I've heard good things. I've seen this on the Grocery Girls podcast a couple times, so I was excited when I saw it in person. I had to try it. So I think these two together should make a beautiful Guthrie. That'll be a huge project for me. It's an all-over colorwork sweater, and getting it to fit. And yeah, I'm excited though. I'm really excited about the yarn that I got. I think this is going to be the next sweater that I cast on. Well, it's the yarn that I've got, so I'll do that. Also though, I decided to pick up some Texas yarn. So this is a local Texas yarn, and it's called Chasing Rabbits. And I think Fern is the name. Yeah, so it's a Fern is the base, and it's a 4-ply fingerling, 85% merino and 15% nylon. So it's a sock yarn. This is the color Mother Road, and this is Water Hyacinth. They feel super soft. I love the colors. I also just kind of love the colors together. So it's like a mauve and then this almost like electric green. And let's see, where in Texas is it from? Does it say? No, it doesn't mention where in Texas it's from. But I got a really helpful lady at the store who let me know where the Texas yarn was. Yeah, so I did some more damage. I also ordered some yarn which they're gonna send me in October for another sweater. So I think at this point I've got a good size stash. 2 years ago, I didn't have any stash. I would only buy yarn and knit for that project. And now the opposite has happened. I used to also be a, what's that called? A monogamous knitter and have no stash. So I was just very good. Everything I bought, I knit with. Now I've become a polyamorous knitter, I guess. And I have got the workings of a stash, it's kind of fun, but I need to tone it down and knit what I've got, especially because colors kind of come in and out of style. I've tried to find colors that would stay in style, but it's important to knit the yarn I've got before I kind of lose my enchantment with it. Although these yarns, I don't know if I could ever not be excited about them. So yeah, that's what I've been up to for the month of August, and looking into September, all the fun knit-alongs and conferences. It's going to be a great September, October. Hope you guys are having a good September, the transition into fall with school, a little bit of changing weather. You get to wear your handmade knit items. Best of luck on all your projects, and I'll see you next month for the Cat Knits podcast. Thanks. Bye.